Well, it's good to see you here. Victorville represents. Good job. And also, we're very thankful for Apple Valley and Phelan, even though we can't hear you presently. We're blessed to have you. If you need a copy of the notes, raise your hand. We'll provide that for you. Come on, get them up. We're going to tell you something important today, as opposed to all the other times we tell you things. I think it's going to be an encouragement to you. I trust it will be, because we're going to talk about living in a stressful world without stress. So maybe it'll encourage you, help you. We are considering the books of history in this, our second series on Route 66. And today we'll find ourselves in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. So if you have your Bibles, turn to 2 Chronicles 20. If you don't know where that is, it's right after 1 Chronicles. You'll get there. I have faith in you. Last night, dear friend of ours, about as good a friend as any guy could ever ask for, Skip Ely, was in a pretty serious accident and was airlifted to Loma Linda University Medical Center. And he has a broken neck as well as a number of other less significant things, but he's going to be there a while. I say that so you'll pray for Skip. Don't try to visit him, because he's not going to be up for that, but just keep him in your prayers. So about an hour before the service last night, I called Todd and I said, the script for the message is on my desk. You're on your own, bro. And so he came in at the last minute and took care of the service last night and did a wonderful job. But just pray for Skip and let him know as you take him to the throne of God how much we appreciate him. Many of you know him, some of you don't. Take my word for it. He's worth knowing. You'd love him if you did. Well, we're talking about lessons in leadership. And all these kings that we are looking at, some are kings, some are just other leaders. All of these men and women have some valuable insights to share with us about how we can lead better. You may not consider yourself to be a leader, but as we've been sharing with you throughout the series, you are one. God has surrounded you with a group of people whom you are leading. If not to a saving understanding of who Jesus Christ is, certainly you're helping to lead them on their spiritual journey as they grow in Christ. And every one of us has about 8 to 15 of those people. The Greeks called that group an oikos, and it is the purpose for which we wake up every day, to reveal God's greatness to those individuals, help them see who He really is and how He can be for them what He has become for us. Now today we're going to look at the life of Jehoshaphat, not the entire life, but one chapter out of his life. There actually is a Jehoshaphat in the Bible, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, as we could call him today. But we're going to elevate a particular quality from his life that I think would be something we all could emulate, and that is the idea of resolve, and bringing that to the table as we have a conversation about our faith and about what it means to reflect God's glory to our oikos. Let me tell you what I think resolve means. In fact, the dictionary describes it this way. It means to make up your mind. But the Bible also describes it as the trigger for faith. And that's what we want to process today. Now, even though resolve is technically just making up your mind, I want you to know that as we describe it, we're not just talking about, making a decision to do something. It even goes beyond commitment. For example, some of you made a commitment to your marriage, but you're not married today because perhaps you lacked resolve. At some point in the past, some of you made a commitment to tithe to the Lord, but you no longer do because you did not bring resolve to that decision. Some of you made a commitment at the beginning of this series, at the beginning of our Route 66 emphasis earlier this year. You made a commitment to read through the Bible, but you've fallen off the wagon, probably somewhere in the middle of Leviticus, because you lacked what? Resolve. So I want you to know it goes beyond commitment. But it is not just a state of mind. It actually is the trigger for something greater. And that is, it is the gateway to a season of renewed faith and growth in our spiritual lives. The writer of Hebrews says that people of faith have confidence in what we hope for and assurance in what we do not see. The Apostle Paul said that we live by faith, not by sight. But our feelings are based on what we see. So in many ways, faith is the opposite of feelings. Faith is what pushes back on how we feel. We feel a certain way, and faith stops us in our tracks and causes us to reassess and recognize there is always something greater than our feelings at play. The Bible says that without faith, you cannot please God. It doesn't say you might not. It doesn't say there's not a real good chance you're gonna. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So whenever I come to a quality like resolve and I recognize its value, is that it triggers this faith that we experience in our relationship with God. I am really listening. I am interested. And I hope that you are too. Every stressful situation, not that you ever experience a stressful situation in your life. Everybody's saying, seriously? No, I'm not. You're stressed. You're overstressed. Can I get a testimony? And then Jesus comes along and he says, don't ever stress. I'm thinking, he's Jesus. He's supposed to be right. But he can't be at that point. Be anxious for how many things? Let me break down the word nothing for you. No thing. Let's close in prayer. All right, again. Every time we stress, which is often, stress triggers a fear in our lives. And there's usually an event, and then we fear. And when we fear, our fears, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Naaman, the story of Naaman, and how his fear, based on his medical condition, actually created a sense of anger. And that happens. Sometimes fear looks a lot like anger. And I think of the angry responses that I've had, even with the people I love in my life, and those exchanges, it was really based inside of my fears. I would have conversations with our kids as they were growing up, and they weren't God-honoring conversations, not because of the content, but because of the level of anger through which those concepts were expressed. And yet I told them this afterwards so many times. I said, you guys, I'm angry because I'm afraid. I'm not afraid really about what you're doing as much as I'm afraid that I can't solve this for you. I'm a problem solver at heart, and when I can't figure it out, I get frustrated with myself, and I get mad at myself, and that sounds more like I'm mad at someone else, but it isn't the case, actually. I want to show you a chart. I want you to become familiar with the chart because I want you to see the relationship between an emotional response to a crisis and a thoughtful response to a crisis. And it begins with an event. And it could be anything. It could be, well, it always is something that threatens our sense of security or our stability. It could be a report about the results of a medical examination. And that event triggers fear in our spirit. It could be a pink slip from our employer. And that simple exchange, and now we're afraid. It could be the defeat of a favorite political candidate, or it could be watching a terrorist attack unfold in real time in this digital age in which we live. There's an event, and then there's an immediate sense of fear. In fact, you could ask yourself this question right now. When was the last time a spirit of fear came over you? What was the event that triggered it? Probably with that event came a season of emotion. And I use these terms, anger and laziness. In fact, in our teaching team, we asked the question, is laziness really fair? And I stuck with it, even though some advised me against it, because I want to make a point today. Usually what happens is when we have this stressful event and we are then thrown into this season of fear, it is expressed through feeling that fear through being grumpy. I mean, you become very grumpy to the people around you, or you withdraw. And I call it laziness because we withdraw to the point where we don't want to work at finding the resolution. We just withdraw. We become this social hermit. We want to go off into the corner and feel sorry for ourselves. Case in point right there. And I want you to know that God is neither surprised nor is He bothered by our emotions, because He created us as emotional people. Truly, we are created in the image of God, and God is an emotional God. But God's personality, emotional personality, and we read in the Bible about even anger being expressed by God. God's anger is never expressed out of fear. God is not afraid of anything. God is fearless. Why would God be afraid of anything? In fact, the Bible says that anger is okay. It's the sin that accompanies anger that is not okay. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, listen to this. The Apostle Paul said, "In your anger do not sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're angry." We talk about our righteous indignation, towards sin. We're just mad at sin. But you guys, if our anger is directed completely towards sin and not the sinner, we're good. We're godly. But if it's directed at the sinner, then our graceless attitude needs to be extinguished. And we have a very difficult time separating the sin from the sinner. God may be able to do that, perfectly. We don't. And we get mad at a sin, and it kind of bleeds into an attitude of bitterness and resentment toward the one who committed the sin. And God says, you have to draw the line on anger. That's what that passage means. It's not like God's all burnt out because you emoted, even in an angry way. To be angry is human. To let it last is stupid. To withdraw is normal. To let it last means you're depressed and withdrawn and destructive. So, okay, let's be human for a minute. Let's have an event, a stressful event. I'm backwards because you're looking at me. We have a stressful event, and immediately we fear, and now we're going to be angry or we're going to be lazy. It's okay. But there has to come a time when we say, wait a minute, that's not allowed. See, that's self-destructive, smacking yourself in the head. In case you wonder. Don't do it. I'm not a very good example. And this hurts. Actually, I hit this side because in the first hour I hit this side this morning, so I'm completely broken. But God gives us, this is what I love about God. He doesn't throw something subjective out there. He says, let me give you a very objective test to whether or not you're staying angry, or even, I'll throw in there, being withdrawn, emoting. Let me give you an objective test to know if you're emoting too long. The sun goes down. That's something we can all relate to. Doesn't matter what hemisphere you live in. Doesn't matter what generation you live in. Doesn't matter what your, financial state of being might be. For everybody, everywhere, always, at some point the sun goes down. In fact, that's probably like 8 hours from now. So if you're ticked off, you got 8 hours to get over it. No, seriously. And I don't think that it was necessarily a matter of God saying, but it's okay to stay angry for the next 8 hours. just whoop on them for the next 8 hours. That's cool. But at 8 hours from now, you got to knock it off. That's not the point. Point is this. There has to come a time when we stop emoting. And how are you ever going to stop emoting? Well, that's where resolve comes in. In fact, the length of time that elapses during our anger phase or during our laziness phase can actually be a test of our spiritual maturity and our emotional health. You see, a spiritually immature person never gets over it. It's just like, okay, see the arrow? Just goes on and on and on. A song comes to mind. Can't remember which one. On and on. On and on and on. You know what happens with somebody who has more maturity in their lives? Somebody who's more mature has a definite point where he resolves or she resolves. And you say, well, is that when the Lord is going to actually bring resolution and fix everything? No, that's not. But this is what people say. Until the Lord brings the resolution, until the Lord fixes my problem, I'm going to stay angry or I'm going to stay withdrawn. And you know what you negate? You negate the opportunity for faith. And that's what resolve does. It triggers faith. And we're going to see that explained today. I don't know. You know, everybody is a little different. And I've categorized things, you know, in two simple categories, anger, laziness. I mean, there might be a number of other expressions of fear. And so I don't claim to speak for everyone. We were at lunch last week. My wife and I took our grandkids out to lunch, and we're sitting at lunch, and very typical, whenever we have a meal in the high desert, we had a number of people recognize us from the church and come over and say hello. And so after, you know, the fourth person came by to say hello, my little 3, soon-to-be 4-year-old grandson, he leaned over and he says, "Papa, do you know everybody in the world?" And my 5-year-old granddaughter is sitting there next to him listening. He says, "Well, I do know he knows an awful lot of Koreans." So I thought that was pretty cool. Just kids, the way they perceive things. But I don't know everybody in the world, and I probably don't know you. I have no idea what you're going through, but I do speak in general terms because I see these principles played out so consistently in our lives. And so what I wish for you is I wish spiritual growth and maturity. In fact, what we could do is we could actually gauge how mature you are in Christ and the growth rate as to, watch this, how compressed we can keep this season. And when the fear triggers that negative response, how soon do you resolve? And then I can actually have a conversation with you about what maturity actually looks like in your life. And that's the thing about fear. You know, you look at anger, you look at laziness, it kind of goes both directions. Those are extreme, you know, just attack or withdraw. Those are extreme reactions to fear. But that's the thing about fear. It actually brings imbalance to our lives. We're imbalanced then, you know, because we're living in an extreme response area. And so what we're talking about today is a balanced life. We're not talking about perfection. I'm not talking about, you know, always being perfect in the way you handle every crisis. And even when Jesus said, don't be anxious for anything, I don't think he was saying never express emotion. I think he would say, I know in your fallenness, you will experience some very negative feelings. But because you have the Holy Spirit now, and because you can experience what it means to have faith in a sovereign God who does love you so, your faith can push back on those feelings that you're experiencing to the point where you can have victory. So we have now in verse 1 of 2 Chronicles 20. Now you're in the passage. After this, and this is just all kinds of weird stuff going on in this section, and you've been reading it, those of you who resolved to, and so you're hanging in, and you know what I'm talking about, or what is referred to there. But the Moabites, the Moabites, the Ammonites, with some of the Meunites came to wage war against Jehoshaphat. Now he's a king of Judah, and some people came and told him, a vast army is coming against you from Edom, from the other side of the Dead Sea. Now, he had a problem. Jehoshaphat had a problem. And the threat was two things. It was significant and it was immediate. See, that's the thing about crisis. It's a significant event and it's an immediate event. This army was not just vast, which means it was bigger than anything he could throw back against it, but it was also just right down the street. I mean, it wasn't like they just left, satellite imagery tells us that they just left their bases on the other side of the world and you only got a couple of weeks to figure this out. It's like, dude, we're messed up here. We don't know what we can do. And so he understandably emoted. He was alarmed. In fact, look at verse 3. Alarmed. Yeah, you'd be. I'd be. He was. But verse 3 is the tipping point. You guys, it's the tipping point. Alarmed, Jehoshaphat what? Resolved to inquire of the Lord. And it's that resolve that makes all the difference. And that's the beauty of the sequence, because it seems like there's a fairly or relatively brief season of alarm before he triggered faith. And he pulled the trigger when he resolved. And had he reveled in his fears for very long, it would have been destructive. It would have been all over. You don't just look at a vast and already threat and withdraw to your chamber and just feel sorry for yourself. Come on, king. It's time somebody leads here. And at the same time, you just don't start getting mad at everybody around you because they're not finding resolutions for you. That would have been disastrous. The enemy was too close for Jehoshaphat to let that season just kind of remain. See, you snooze, you what? Exactly. If your anger's short-lived, you're a human being. If it lasts very long, it's called a grudge. If your fear causes you to disconnect for a short time, we can all understand that. You remain disconnected, it's depression. And every one of the greats we've been reading about for the last several months, they've all gone through this. I'm going to show you at the end, Jesus went through this sequence. It's all part of being human. Moses didn't think he could face down Pharaoh, but he was a man of resolve, which is why we read about him. David didn't think he could survive Saul's hatred, but he was a man of resolve, which is why he's the last name of the Messiah. Elijah thought Jezebel would kill him, but she did not, because at some point he smacked himself. He said, "This is nuts. I can't go on like this." And then they remembered what their fears revealed. That's all these guys, Jehoshaphat included, and you and I. This is what resolve means. You just remember what your fears are revealing. And this is what your fears are revealing. You don't remember very well. So that's the point. Remember that you don't remember very well. They had forgotten God's batting average. God's got a very incredibly good batting average. You know what it is? Yeah, it's 1,000. In baseball, Major League Baseball, and the world's turned upside down right now. The Dodgers are in first place. That's a great thing. You can be, thank you. And if you're on the team, please tithe. You can be a 300 hitter and go into the Hall of Fame, because there are some in there. It means you make it out 70% of the time you're a Hall of Famer. You can be the best basketball player in the NBA and miss 60% of your shots. And we buy their jerseys. We build shrines in our homes. I mean, we tweet that. And here comes God. He's never let any one of his children down. Like ever. And he's never let you down either. And you forgot that. Okay, slap yourself. Because you need to remember that. That's all. That's all this is. It's remembering. And the people of Judah came together, verse 4. They came together to seek help from the Lord, and indeed they came from every town in Judah to seek him. So this is a large group. This reminds me of what church attendance looks like after a terrorist attack. It's like everybody comes to church. I mean, you know who's butter in your bread? So you come to worship. You come to humble yourself. You come to seek God. And then after a while, you stop coming. Why? Because you forgot. And then something else happens, and it's like, oh, yeah. Look at verse 12, all the way down to 12. We have no power to face this vast army that's attacking us. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. They did not have a plan. They only had God. And by the way, is this a good thing? God always has a plan. And this is what you need to know about your crisis. It's not about us, and it's not... This, what you say to me, I would assume there would be at least some in the auditorium today who would say to me, Tom, you talk like God. You know God's going to resolve this issue for us. There's going to be some resolution, and he's going to fix it. How do you know that, Tom? Well, he loves you. Oh, how he loves you. I agree with this. On the other hand, his reputation is on the line. Because he has stated he would save you from this. And every time we go through a crisis, one of his kids that he's already vouched for, it's his reputation. I mean, I know he loves us, but this is bigger than you and bigger than me. If he doesn't come through for you, you ready for this? He ceases being God. Which is why, that's why he bats 1,000, because he can't stop being him. You know, it's just God being God. It's how he rolls. And the Spirit of God came upon Jahaziel, son of Zechariah, verse 14. Verse 15, he said, listen, King Jehoshaphat, and all you who live in Judah and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says, do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army. This battle is not yours. This battle is God's. It is his reputation. This is God's name that will be elevated. And so, you know, again, you're withdrawing to your chamber and you're feeling sorry for yourself, or you're striking out at the people around you, and you don't have to be afraid. And Jesus says, be anxious for what? No thing. Why? Why? Because this is about the name of God. You know, not about whether you're going to fall through the cracks. God can't let anybody fall through the cracks. That's not on his job description. You see, having faith is not a matter of working out a plan of resolution. In fact, you may not even know where to begin. Nothing wrong with that either. We reach the point, like the people of Judah, we have no plan. We don't know what to do. But our faith is in you. Faith is about pursuing a God who is preparing to reveal his plan to you. He is going to fix it. He's preparing to fix it. And there's going to be a season of faith that will be triggered by your resolve when you remember that he bats 1,000. Now watch this. Resolve is inextricably connected to what we think about God. You understand that? You cannot disconnect what you think about God from your ability to resolve. And so they're always going to be hooked up. And our thoughts about who God is, they're so undisciplined. It's like the exercise regimen that you made a commitment to, you know, the first of the year. And there are thoughts that you have about, oh man, I'm committed. And then there are thoughts like, oh, I'm sleeping in. We're so undisciplined in what we think about those resolutions that we make. And that's true when it comes to our theology as well. Our understanding of God fluctuates because of our fallenness. We remember, we forget. We remember, we forget. We so easily forget. Tozer said this, that what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us at any point in time. What do you think about God? And Jehoshaphat, verse 5, stands up in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem at the temple of the Lord in front of the new courtyard. And he says, Lord, the God of our ancestors, are you not the God who's in heaven? You rule over all the heavens and the nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. You know that question, are you not the God who is in heaven? That is not a question he's waiting for an answer for. That's what we call a rhetorical question. That's a statement in the form of a question. Did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people Israel and give it to the descendants of Abraham your friend? You know what he's doing for the whole nation? He's remembering. Resolved. Do you remember what Jehoshaphat did initially? He resolved to inquire about the Lord. They stopped to collect their thoughts about God's sovereign control of history. They stopped to look at the league stats once again. All of the guys did that. All of them. Moses, Elijah, David, Jehoshaphat, Tom, you. Lord, you have always had the whole world in your hands. And you can never forget God's batting average. And then after, this is the thing. You know, we've read this already in our journey of a lifetime. We've read this already. God, they remember, they resolve, they remember. They go through these times of worship and reflection on how God has always come through. He's batting 1,000. We're good here. And then they go through the process of faith, triggering that faith. And then after the resolution, after God fixes it, then they say, now let's build a monument. Right? And they have one member from each tribe brings a stone, and they build this monument of 12 stones. And why do they build a monument? Because they're thinking, we can't forget this again. And then what happens? They can't remember what they built the monument for. We forget so easily who God is, don't we? Well, I want to give you 4 thoughts, begin to land this thing. First of all, this is what I learned from the story. In fact, we're going to finish the story in a minute. But first of all, number 1, you're not being picked on. Whatever the crisis is here, please do not think that God has selected you for this overwhelming season of difficulty because, you know, you're a loser. God is not picking on you. Your circumstance is not unique, so don't blame people. No. You are just a small part in a much larger narrative. Let me explain in just one statement what the narrative looks like. The salvation of humanity from hell, okay? Now that we've painted the large picture, your part is going to play some role, we'll see it in a minute, some role to that great end. But you're not being picked on. This is what I want you to know. You're being used by a God who has a purpose in history. So that's comforting. Number 2, every crisis is temporary. Every crisis is temporary. Our favorite story, Luke 2, because it talks about the favorite holiday that we look forward to every year, Christmas. Luke 2 starts this way. The old translations read, and it came to pass. Okay? It came to pass. Because everything's going to what? Pass. Now, the newer translations, in fact, the NIV starts Luke 2 this way. In those days. It came to pass in those days. Both are true. It will pass, and someday you'll be looking back at what you're experiencing now, and you'll be smiling about what God did in those days. So these days will at some point be those days. Anyway, you just need to remember that. Number 3, put yourself in a position to score. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. I am a basketball coach. I'm not a great basketball coach. I'm not a great X's and O's guy. I know how to teach the fundamentals of the game, which means that with young kids, I just love that. And, you know, these kids need to learn some fundamental ideas about the game of basketball. And so, you know, Coach Tom was available when my kids were young. It was Coach Dad to them, and we had some great teams, you know, these little guys. One of these days, if my grandchildren want to play basketball, Coach Pops will be back in the game. But one of the principles I always told the kids is put yourself in a position to score. See, if you're like a first grader and you're wandering around without the ball near the center court line, I'm saying, what are you doing there? And you say, well, I don't have the ball. I say, dude, what happens if we threw you the ball right now? I mean, you couldn't launch a basketball from where you're standing to the basket. You're only in the first grade. There's no way if I or a team member passed you the ball right there, you could do the team or yourself any good at all. And I'd say the same thing to every Christian in the world today. You're saying, well, I don't have the ball. God hasn't come through yet. He hasn't fixed anything. What happens if He does? Look where you're at. You couldn't do anything with it if He came through for you. So don't just sit there. You know, people talk about waiting on the Lord. Well, I'm just going to wait on the Lord. You know, when you say that, you're revealing how unenlightened you are about life and even Scripture. You know what the Hebrews meant when they said, I'm going to wait on the Lord? They meant this. They meant, in fact, the Hebrew word, wait, it talks about wrapping yourself up around what you already know, clinging to what you already know to be true. That's what it means to wait on the Lord. That's not laziness. In fact, you're working here. Did you know that God is always at work, and that's why you're waiting, because He's always working for you, and that's what makes Him different from all the other mythological gods, all the little g gods that we've been reading about from all these other nations who like to sit around and eat grapes and have somebody cool them off with a palm frond, just reveling in their divinity? The God of the Hebrews, the God of the Bible, the God of you, the God of me, He is at work. Jesus said, my Father is always working, and I too am now at work. The Apostle Paul said that the universe is not on autopilot, that Jesus is busy holding it all together. The psalmist said that God never rests. He never sleeps. He's always working. That's good. We are created in His image to always be doing something positive. And we need to hold things together. You know, that's what waiting on the Lord is. Some of you guys just sitting back saying, well, we're just broke. You know, I'm just going to wait on the Lord until I win the lottery. Which, by the way, is a tax on people who are bad at math. But some of you will get that later. You don't just wait for this big windfall. You know what you might want to do? You might want to go to Financial Peace University. That might be what happens during your season of faith. Why? Because you resolve. You see, you lost your job, right? You fear, right? You feel like God let you out, left you out in the cold, right? That's very human. That's very typical. But at some point, what do? You smack yourself. That's what you do. And you remember the God who serves His people and saves the ones that He loves. And He will save you, and He will fix this. But you will now begin a season where you will wrap yourself around what you already know you need to be doing. This is not a season for rest. Faith does not equal rest. Faith equals activity. As you seek the Lord, as you inquire of the Lord, as you look for what God might want to teach you during the season, He will fix it. But you've heard me say it many times. Even God can't steer a parked car. So get moving. Become active. And that's what the story reveals. Look at verse 16. Tomorrow, march down against them. What do you mean march down against them? Dude, we don't have an army that's even close to the size of those guys' army. He said already, it's not the battle you're going to have to fight. You're not going to have a resolution. You're not going to fix this. What do you have to do? You got to show up. And part of showing up is marching. They're going to be climbing up by the Pass of Ziz. And you'll find them at the end of the gorge in the desert of Jeruel. And you'll not have to fight this battle. You don't have to fight it. But you do have to show up. You do have to take your position. Stand firm and see the deliverance of the Lord. Judah and Jerusalem, don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. Go out and face Him tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you. And that's what they did. And the story evolves. And there's the enemy. And in the heat of the battle, the enemy, because of God's fight, they turn on each other. They destroy each other. This is so great. Look at verse 24. When the men of Judah came to the place, it overlooks the desert. And they looked toward the vast army. The vast army is still there. The army is as vast as it ever was. Only they're dead. That's dead vast. That's different than the vast army that we read about in verse 1. They saw dead bodies lying on the ground. How many escaped? Read it. You tell me, how many escaped? No one. Nobody falls through the cracks here. Nobody's abandoned. Nobody's on their own. You can stop being grumpy, and you can stop feeling sorry for yourself. And if you don't want to do that now, that's okay. You got 8 hours. Figure it out by then. Because once you enter that season of faith, and the spring returns to your step, the resolution that God promised is on its way. And then I can't let you go until you understand the whole point of the story. By the way, you know, we could all cheer, hey, God fixed it, and He killed all the bad guys. Ooh, look at the plunder. I mean, this is amazing. Look at verse 25. So Jehoshaphat and his guys, he went off to carry off their plunder. And you've read about this. It always happens at the end of a war. This has happened, I don't know how many times we've been reading for the last few months. And they found among them a great amount of equipment and clothing, and also articles of value, more than they could take away. There's so much plunder. It took 3 days to collect it. I find that very interesting because God doesn't just fix things. He fixes things beyond what you expected. When that army showed up, all they were asking God for was deliverance. And God not only delivered them, but He blessed them. Deliver plus bless. Okay, now, that doesn't even matter, really. We haven't got to the end of the story yet. Number 4. We'll look at the verse 29 in a minute. Number 4, don't miss the chance to make an impact. Now, this is the thing. Look at verse 29. Fear of God came on all the surrounding kingdoms when they heard how the Lord had fought against the enemies of Israel. Let me read it again because some of you are filling in the blanks. Go ahead, fill in the blanks. Okay, you done? Can't miss this. Verse 29. This is so amazing. The fear of God came on all the surrounding kingdoms. You say, well, what does that mean? That means oikos. I mean, people are watching. They're watching how the nation responded to the crisis. They're watching how they resolved. They're watching their faith. They're watching the resolution that God provides. And what do people do who watch? That's the whole idea behind this world change idea. Those 8 to 15, they're all around. God put them around so they could watch. You're like a display case for what God can do in an environment that begins with a trigger stress event and creates fear, and then you resolve, and then you have faith, and then God fixes. But look at the last line in the chart here. Okay, no, that's all right. Go back. That's my fault. Go back one. Yeah, connect the dots of your crisis and the gospel. Okay, I got to show you something, but I got to wait for you to fill in the blanks. Go ahead. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Did you do that? C-R-I-S-I-S and capital G-O-S-P-E-L. Okay, this is it. You got your crisis, right? That's it. And you got the gospel. Now, this is the Reader's Digest version of that chart. You got your crisis, you got the gospel. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to connect those two dots, okay? In your mind's eye, connect those two dots. And now this is the cool thing. You know what that line represents? The depth of your theology. Because you're not just understanding how great God is, now you're understanding what He's trying to do. Most Christians I meet never get there because it's all about them. And they don't recognize what God is trying to accomplish in the surrounding nations that He's brought into all of our lives. Okay, not nations, people. But that's the cool thing. Now let's go to I got to show you this. This is the impact. See this little arrow? That's where it leads. That's the whole point. It's like boom. Boom. I just love this. Now why? You could look at every sequence, every phase in your sorry little lives. You know, we got all this stress. You could look at the sequence every time. And I know this is what happened. I know this because I'll finish my sentence later, but this is what happened with Jesus. You say, Jesus, in his humanity, he even negotiated this. What's the event? Okay, we're at the last meal there, the Last Supper, celebrating Passover. Crucifixion is coming. You know what that is? That's stressful. If I told you you were going to be crucified within a matter of hours, you would all be stressed. Jesus was stressed. And so what happens? He's afraid. He's afraid. And I'm not going to say he handled it in an ungodly way. With Jesus, like this phase is boom, boom. I mean, it's like real tight. But he withdrew to the Garden of Gethsemane because Jesus essentially, by withdrawing the Garden of Gethsemane, said, I need a moment. So he took one. And the fellows followed him. And he prayed. And he said, Lord, if it is possible, what did he say? I don't want to do this. Let this cup pass. But then he said, after he resolved himself, he said, since it is not possible, we're going for it. And what were the next hours as he died? A season of faith. He said, Father, into your hands I commit my life, my spirit. And then it got fixed. So, call that the resurrection. And then what happened after the resurrection? And the entire course of human history was turned upside down. And he built his church. And that's impact. Jesus had to go through this. And you don't? See how stupid we sound to ourselves when we actually say it out loud? It's going to be all right. Never miss the chance to create impact. Like the guy who told his son that if he wanted to live a long life, he needed to sprinkle gunpowder on his cornflakes every morning. And he did that religiously, lived to the age of 93. When he died, he left 14 children, 28 grandchildren, 35 great-grandchildren, and a 15-foot hole in the wall of the crematorium. It's all about impact, right? All right. Yes. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for giving us the chance to retreat to this place today, to withdraw here and be reminded of what you can do for us and through us. And by your grace, we will let you, with great joy, allow you to use us to fulfill your great cause in history. With everybody's head bowed, your eyes closed, as we say every weekend. If you don't know this God that I've been describing today, if you're on the outside of this thing looking in, and God is revealing himself to you in a way right now that is compelling you to consider the possibility of becoming a child of this great God that is revealed so clearly in the Scriptures. Maybe you need to admit that you need a God like that. You need to be saved from yourself and your sin. And B, believe that Jesus is the God, the only one who can help you. And C, choose. You can resolve to place your faith in Christ. And he will save you. And he will change your life, and he will change your world. And Lord, use us this week, we pray, in Jesus' name. All God's children said, amen. Hey, leave your welcome form back there, and we'll see y'all next time.